Break here from lunch. We got AAM operating here to do another presentation. So this time, I think everyone take their seats. I'll turn the floor back over to, well, I'll give the floor to Carl and Rowan. Okay, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you again, and we've included a few slides from the previous presentation, but some of you may not have been able to attend, so just give you a quick overview. Anyway, so the last time we were here, we talked about the objectives. We received some feedback from several of the people in the room, and so we're sensitive to the fact you want to develop your resources in an environmentally responsible manner. We know you want to increase the number of jobs on the tribal land.
It turns it off back there too. All the offices don't have lights now.
We will get some government funding to help with some of the jobs programs we want to implement. Our key benefits are that we have a very cost-effective exploration program that works really well. We find through an aerial survey, we find invest 5 to 10% of the area in tribal lands that is prospective for hydrocarbons. This saves you a lot of time and money in terms of it's a very large area to explore, and so this accelerates that. And then we'll use other environmentally sensitive technologies like electromagnetotellurics and geochemistry. These are simple, low-impact devices. We have a team that has over 200 years of oil and gas and minerals experience. We also have external minerals experts who can help us to evaluate the other mineral resources on the tribal lands. And we think this will create many jobs. We believe our initial assessment will create over 50 jobs in the next couple of years. The key thing is that we'll do the initial phase of the exploration at our expense, out of our pocket, and we'll conduct an airborne study to look at the geophysics on the land covering the reservation.
I have a question. Out of your pocket, at the end, whose data would it belong to? Or who would it belong to us or you?
Well, during the exploration phase, we'll own the data, and then at some point in the future, it'll transfer over to you. And then one of the things I've been talking to someone else, Merritt was kind enough to give me data on a big thick book and several maps I've been provided by people in the room. And so I think eventually what we may do is create a confidential website for you so we can upload the data so that you don't lose the data. One of the challenges with data is it's real easy to lose. And we think, what we can do is let you all maintain it once we get it established. We'll just upload it. You probably want it password protected so that nobody outside the tribe can get access to it. So we're expecting, using the 5% rule of thumb, the total land position in the Crow lands is 3,600 square miles. And I'll show you in a second. We have a lot of experience doing this, and on average, I would say roughly the minimum is around 5% of the area, which would be about 180 square miles of hydrocarbons. And based on the initial research we've done, it shows that there's a lot of statistically probable hydrocarbons that haven't been discovered yet. So the next phase, after we do the aeromagnetic survey, is we'll also do ground-based geophysical surveys, and then we'll follow that up with some exploratory wells and best prospects, and that'll help guide us on the development plan from there. My company's background is we've been doing similar projects. We were formed in 1983, and between the years 87 and 2006, we did a big test in South Texas where we monitored all the drilling activity after we'd done a survey. And we found out that we had 144 prospects. Of those, 43 were drilled in that time frame. 38 out of the 43 were successful, which is a pretty high success rate. On wildcats, normally you're going to see 10 to 20% success rate, but in this particular test, it was higher than that. And we found about $13 billion worth of natural gas. This is in the southern tip of Texas, the southern 10 counties in Texas. I live in Houston, but I travel quite a bit. We published our track record in a magazine, or it's actually a book. It's the American Association of Petroleum Geologists and Society of Exploration Geophysicists book called Surface Exploration Case Histories. Back in 2002, we documented our 88% success rate. As you can see, we've done surveys in all sorts of different environments: Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, all the way to the North Slope of Alaska, Tunisia, Colombia, New York, Colorado, California, and Oman in Australia, sorry. My background is I've been in the energy business about 40 years, primarily with large companies. I started in 1976. I was involved in the audit of Phillips Petroleum and Conoco. When there were two separate companies, Amerada Hess and Williams. Williams hired me. Spent 13 years with them. I've done about $9 billion worth of energy transactions in my career. We have several distinguished geologists, geophysicists, and minerals experts on our team. We've done work for several of the biggest oil companies in the world. ExxonMobil, we did 6 studies for them, primarily in West Texas back in the 80s. I've done a lot of work for Mitchell Energy in Alabama and also in West Texas, Anadarko, up on the North Slope of Alaska. Our technology is sophisticated, but it's fairly simple in terms of understanding. If you'll see, we'll fly an airplane 1,000 feet off the ground, and you have oil down here in red, and oil seeps out of the seal. There's a seal on top of the reservoir that keeps the oil in place. And so as it seeps, it's actually methane that's seeping out of the reservoir, and it's just like a chimney, goes straight up to the surface of the earth. And then as it gets within 1,000 feet of the surface, a bacterial bloom forms. And what that means is you have bacteria, and here's an electron microscope telescope, and you can't see them with a human eye or even with a magnifying glass. These are measured in microns. This is half a micron. You see in the body, they have these little cubes, looks like sugar cubes. That's the element magnetite. And the petroleum geologist who developed this technique, he's convinced that these are the bacteria that create the bloom, which we detect when we fly over. And you'll see there's a low frequency wave, and then there's a high frequency wave on top of it. And the low frequency wave tells you what's going on distant from the surface, so it's basically representing this. And the high frequency part is close to the surface. So that's essentially how the technology works. So when we fly over, we fly in a checkerboard fashion, and we correlate the lines north-south and east-west and put them together, and that's how we identify the outline of the initial prospect. Then we follow up with many other tools to fine-tune it after that. This is the typical airplane we use. It's a Cessna Caravan, and it's very good at flying low and slow. So basically, we'll be about 1,000 feet off the ground, traveling at about 120 miles an hour. This is the area where we did the original survey I talked about earlier, where we found 88% success rate. This is the book we published. This is a project we did on the North Slope of Alaska, and it's unusual because you see it's the highest percentage we've seen anywhere in the world. 16% of the area showed hydrocarbons. And normally, as I'm expecting here, it'll probably be in the 4.7 to 6.4% range in terms of total area having hydrocarbons. And what we do is we find the most prospective areas, the most economic areas, so we can focus our resources on hopefully things that will make us all money. So we did some initial research on Montana, and obviously here's the tribal lands. You'll see right here, this is the Powder River Basin, and the way they have it coded up, and this is part of the Energy Information Administration, the gray area, like right here and right here, are where they indicate are the sweet spots, the most prospective spots. Unfortunately, they're not inside the reservation. You're on the edge of it. This general area is called the basin, but the prospective area, according to the government's right there in Wyoming. So we pulled publicly available information on the past production, and it appears there are essentially 4 large fields that are pretty good, actually. So these are the field names: Soap Creek and Soap Creek East, Launch Grass and Ash Creek, and the total's about 5 million barrels. So if we can duplicate that, we can find another 5 million barrels on the tribal lands. That'd be total value in the ballpark of $250 million at $50 a barrel. And then obviously you get a piece of that, or investor group, and we get a piece of that. So that's how that works. Hopefully, when oil's today is $70, it's even better than that. So the biggest field you have is right here. That is Soap Creek. Launch Grass is over here, and this is Ash Creek. So we think there ought to be about 150 to 180 square miles remaining. And I'll show you this one. Each one of these squares is a square mile. So you can see that the total productive area of Soap Creek is around, I'd say, a little bit 2 miles, maybe 2.5 miles. And so, and that's the biggest thing that's been discovered. And I suspect we'll find, hopefully, several of those. You don't know, it's just impossible to predict. And then there's another field to the east of it called Soap Creek. And one thing, the way people explored in the old days was they would kind of keep drilling. Once they found something, they'd keep stepping out. And you see right here's a dry hole, and here's a dry hole, that little circle with the dash above and below and to left and right. Here's 2 dry holes. So you can see as they tried to step out here, they hit dry holes. As they tried to step out up here, they hit more dry holes. And so they basically surrounded it. So I think it's unlikely that we're going to see much expansion. But there may be something, for example, in between the two. You just don't know until you get out there. And same thing here. They tried to take the Soap Creek east to the south, and they hit 3 dry holes in a row. This is the Launch Grass field, which is a 400,000 barrel field. It's still a good field. And there are only 5 wells in it. They're all relatively shallow, as I recall. I think most of the wells are less than 5,000 feet, which in oil and gas terms is not very deep. And occasionally I'll see a random well outside these prospects. And this symbol right here is a gas symbol. So I don't know whether they actually produce gas out of it or not. We've got to get more data. My guess is there wasn't a gas pipeline nearby, and they found gas and they didn't produce it. And this is the Ash Creek field in the southeastern the tribal lands. And so you can see there are 3 wells, and they're pretty good wells. 3 wells do 900,000 barrels, and those would be pretty economic. Right now, oil prices are much higher than natural gas prices. You know, on what's called a BTU equivalence, a heating value equivalence, oil is trading at about $11 per MMBTU, and natural gas is trading about $2.90. So in the heating value equivalence, oil is about almost 4 times more valuable than natural gas. So our initial focus is going to be on crude, but if we find some significant natural gas opportunities, of course we're going to pursue those as well. So when I was here after the meeting, somebody asked me, how do we compare what we're doing to 3D seismic? And so this slide explains that. So normally a 3D seismic survey costs between $50,000 and $60,000 per square mile, and this merely to acquire the data. And on an area this large, it probably would take you several years if you were to shoot 3D on the entire Crow lands. Again, you have 3,600 square miles, 2.3 million acres. So that would cost you around $180 million to $215 million. And I've got a good friend who's a geologist who used to head international exploration for a big company called Anadarko. And he said he believed that 3D seismic is a great sales tool, but it's a terrible exploration tool because it's just too expensive if you're covering a big area. Now, if you're covering a specific prospect, it may make sense to shoot 2 or 3 square miles. But if you're covering 3,600 square miles, it's just not feasible. Anyway, it would take years to do and be disruptive, and that's going to be a lot of dynamite. When I was here, I think, can't remember, I think maybe Merritt mentioned that some seismic was shot some time ago, and they had to drill lots of holes, they had to plug a lot of dynamite in the hole, and our technique is from the airport. We may do a little bit of seismic, but it's just be in very limited areas. The other problem with seismic is really good at seeing kind of lump structures that look like that. Those are called anticlines. And so seismic can tell you if there's a structure down there, but it can't tell you if there's hydrocarbons in it. And so many times people drill dry holes on 3D seismic because they don't know if it's got hydrocarbons in the trap or not. I'll show you an example of that in a second. And then seismic's really hard when you have a hilly area and mountains and valleys. It's just more expensive to shoot, and the seismic is harder to read because the rock is not like this. It's sometimes it's standing up like that. So we think in a year and a half we can complete the initial airborne survey, and we'll have multiple airborne instruments on the airplane, magnetics and radiometrics and several other things. And we're going to do what's called a basin study, where a geologist gets all the information and gets his hands on all the old well logs. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to create a website for the tribe so that you can monitor all the public data that we gather as we go through. We'll probably find some existing seismic lines, and we'll have to check and make sure the license permits it. But if we can, we'll upload it to your site so you can look at it. We think this should save about $185 million versus these estimates. So it saves the tribe a considerable amount of money. Plus, hopefully, it'll speed up the process so you get revenue out of this project quicker.
How much does it cost you to square mile?
It'll cost us, counting all these phases I described, probably about 10 to 12 million for the first big phase, fly the country, or I'm sorry, fly the area, do the basin study, do some of the preliminary ground-based geophysics. We might even have money in the budget for a couple wells in the best areas. And then after we do that, once we prove the existence of hydrocarbons, then we can ramp up and drill a lot more wells after that.
know how much it's gonna cost you to do a square mile. You got done at 50 to 60,000. What is your guess?
Good question. I have to cheat and look at my calculator here. Hang on a second. It's around $3,300 per square mile, but that also includes some of the work we're doing on the ground-based geophysics and potentially drilling a couple wells. So you can see it's just a lot cheaper.
Excuse me. Question. Right here.
Yes, sir.
Is there going to be fracking involved once you do all this and you figure out your wells and where you're going to drill, and then you go after the oil? Then your fracking, is that involved in all this?
As a general rule, no. The fracking you hear about on television is on horizontal wells where they go down and they go sideways, and we're just going straight down. We're looking for what's called conventional oil and gas. The other guys are going down and sideways are taking really poor quality rock that's called shale. It's kind of like a mud. They're trying to get oil out of mud, and so they have to frack the heck out of the rock. What we're hoping to find is really high quality rock that you don't have to frack. We may have to put a minor frack on it, but it's nothing like what you see on TV. The ones on TV sometimes they'll take 1,000 truckloads of water to be able to frack a well. Our well is probably less than 1 truckload.
We just entertained some company that came down and did what you're doing here, and we took it back to the communities, and they didn't want it because of water. Want to save our water, and the reason they didn't want it is because there's a lot of fracking. And
right.
That's a main concern is fracking.
But we won't have our water use will be minimal. And, if that's a concern, we can bring the water in from outside the reservation.
I don't think that'd be too much of a concern, but what would be concerned is the water, the aquifer on the bottom is what we're trying to preserve, and what kind of assurance, what kind of protection would go in the language to protect that as far as fracking and stuff like that? Would you have something drawn up in that area?
Yes, that's a big concern of the oil industry right now. We don't want to violate any rules or regulations, so we're going to use what's called best practices. And so we'll be working with environmental experts to design our procedures on how to handle the drilling mud and things like that. Also, I want to point out, most people, when you see it on television, they don't explain the groundwater is usually within 500 feet of the surface. And where the fracking occurs is nearly 2 miles lower through solid rock. And so they do a special cement job when they go through the fresh water zone at 500 feet. And so they'll double line the pipe at that point to keep any pollutants out of the groundwater or out of the fresh water. And just to elaborate on what I said earlier, this is called an anticline here. See how it goes up and over. And oil and gas seek high levels, and so gas will be on top of oil, then you have oil, and then you have water. That's the normal pattern you see. And seismic's good at identifying these things. Seismic's less good when there's a fault that goes through the reservoir because it doesn't have a structure to see. It may see a change in the density of gas. Gas is less dense than oil, and so it might be able to detect that. But where it really has trouble is where it's flat. This is called a stratigraphic trap. You can see how the oil's flat here. When the seismic the shot is looking for humps. And so you won't see this particular oil field if you look at it with seismic. And one of the biggest oil fields in the world is called the Ghawar oil field in Saudi Arabia. Is a stratigraphic trap. So the way they discovered that was it leaked hydrocarbons through the ground, and airplane radar was able to see it during World War II. That's how they found one of the biggest oil fields in the world. So our preliminary proposal, we have to work through the detail first with the tribal leadership. We're willing to commit up to 10 to 12 million of risk capital for the exploration and development program initial phase, and there'll be more money behind that if we're successful. Phase 1, we do a basin study I talked about. Phase 2, we do the aeromagnetic study. We've done 50 million acres as opposed to the total tribal lands are around 3 million acres. So we've done about 20 times as much land is present here. And then we'll prepare to drill initial wells. This is a very large area. It'll take quite a bit of time to explore, and it's much faster the way we do it. Than to shoot 3D seismic, it'd probably take 2 or 3 times as much time. And what we're looking for is a win-win relationship. We want the Crow tribe to be happy with us. We want to have a long-term relationship, 10, 20 years. And so it's important we have open communication. And I'd recommend we meet like once a quarter and just get feedback on, are there any problems or causing any problems? Stuff you don't think about, traffic patterns and whatnot. And so we want to make sure at the end of the process that the Crow Nation is happy with us. And we believe, one of the key outcomes is we think there'll be a lot of new jobs created. And I would guess it's going to be a lot more than 50, but conservatively, I'd say we'll probably create more than 50 jobs. So, our key focus is really revenues and jobs for the Crow tribe, and of course for our investors. We have a 29-year track record of success, and we'll use our best reasonable efforts to minimize any environmental impact. And we have proprietary technology that gives us a significant competitive advantage, both in terms of finding oil and gas, but also doing it low cost with low environmental impact. So at that point, I'd like to open it up for questions if anybody has any questions.
In addition to oil and gas, can you find other minerals?
Yes, sir. We're using, most of my experience has been on the oil and gas side, and so I find you have to realize your limitations, and so I find people that are smarter than I am who are minerals geologists, and they know how to look for gold. I have one guy who's he's a consultant to NASA. He teaches astronauts how to do geology when they're up on the moon and whatnot. He's got a PhD from South Africa. He's discovered gold mines in the past and whatnot. From reading the Bureau of, I think it's BIA report on the Crow tribal lands, they think that there's probably copper here, probably gold. It's hard to find. It's possible you might see some rare earth minerals. You may see diamonds, sapphires, things like that. And there's sapphires in Montana, quite a few. And so I'm bringing in other people who have experience in that area to help us. We're also using 2 tools. The magnetometer, which is the main thing I'm talking about up there, is really good at seeing oil and gas. In Canada, they use a tool called radiometrics. And what radiometrics is, it looks like it's an upside-down light bulb, and it catches gamma rays that come through the Earth. At the center of the Earth, it generates gamma rays that shoot all the way through the surface of the Earth into the outer atmosphere. And Canada's, similar to your situation, is so big that you can't really afford to shoot 3D over all of Canada. And so they fly it And the tool that they found that's best for minerals is radiometrics. And so we're going to have another gentleman who's in Canada, a PhD with a background in radiometrics. He's going to be on our team. So what happens, we'll kind of grab people when we need to bring them in. Good question. Thank you. Yeah, I forgot to mention, we think there's a very good chance we have very valuable sand here. And there's two different qualities. One is like for making the lenses on telescopes, it's really high quality. And the quality of your sand from the reports we've read is very high. So we think there's a good chance we can help you make some money on the sand side. And then one of the biggest demands right now in the Bakken and also West Texas is high quality sand to fracture wells with. We're not going to frack with the sand, but we can create jobs here mining the sand if the tribe permits, and put it on a rail car and ship it up to North Dakota and create jobs that way. We think creating a mine, you can make quite a bit of money on frac sand, or they can't frack a well without it, so they're willing to pay whatever they have to.
More questions?
All right, thank you very much.
Think, Thor, you have anything to say? Nothing? All right. Thank you guys for coming over again, Carl, Road.